Hello and welcome back to my January wrap-up. I read 12 books in January of 2022. It started off as a great reading month and it ended not very well. I read a lot of books that I didn't enjoy and only 2 books that I actually enjoyed. So let's get into it. The first book that I read in January was On Writing by Stephen King, and this is the only book that I rated before I got Storygraph. So I rated this one 5 stars. If I'd had Storygraph, I'm not sure if I would have. It's not fresh enough in my memory to know, but that's one thing to keep in mind. So it's my only 5-star book of the month, and it's the only one that I only used Goodreads to rate. I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the autobiographical elements. I also enjoyed the more instructional writing elements. Not that I'm ever planning on writing anything, but it was really interesting to hear Stephen King's philosophy on writing. I really enjoyed learning about his life, and I really liked learning a bit more about how some of his characters and books came to be. The next book that I read this month is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I rated this book 3.25 stars. I enjoyed this book. It is a non-fiction book. I think I would have preferred it and rated it more highly if the narrative had been a bit straighter, I guess. It was a accumulation or a collection of anecdotes. So I did enjoy it, but it could have been better. The next book that I read this month is Life, the Universe, and Everything by Douglas Adams. It is the 3rd book in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. I rated this book 2.75 stars. It's been a while since I read the 2nd book, so I didn't remember everything that had preceded the 3rd one, but I found that, I couldn't really follow the plot line. I didn't really enjoy it. So I only gave it 2.75 stars, and it makes me want to not read fantasy as much. The next book that I read this month and really enjoyed was North by Scott Jurek. This is a memoir about his FKT attempt on the Appalachian Trail, and it includes 2 perspectives, his and his wife Jenny's perspectives, and it would have been a 4.75 or 5-star if it had only been his own perspective. The next book that I read this month was So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, which is the 4th book in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series by Douglas Adams. This book I rated 2.5 stars. I liked it even less than the 3rd book, and this isn't really a spoiler, but so I already struggled to read fantasy books, and then this one combined fantasy and romance, which are the only 2 genres that I don't really read. So that kind of lowered the rating for me. The next book that I read this month was Beach Read by Emily Henry. This one I rated a 3.25 star. On a romance. It is a romance book, and it wasn't my favorite. I enjoyed the story and I wanted to see how it ended, but I just despise the endings of a lot of romance books, and this is one of them. So I despised the endings. If it hadn't ended that way, it probably might have been 4 stars, but it's now February 12th, and I honestly couldn't tell you what happened in this book. The next book that I read this month is What I Talk About When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami. This is a memoir, I guess. It's exactly what the title suggests. It is this author's opinions on running. And I do not agree with them. I have not read any of his other books, so, this is the only thing I've read by him. I listened to it while I was running, and I didn't enjoy it, and I didn't enjoy him. The next book that I read this month is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This is my least favorite book that I read this month, and I rated it 1.75 stars. This book has too many characters, too many points of view, kind of. I didn't like the start, I didn't like the middle, and I didn't like the end. I know there are a lot of people who love this book, but I was not one of those people. I tried, but it just wasn't for me. The next book that I read this month is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a book that a lot of people love because a lot of people love Taylor Jenkins Reid. But for me, this was only a 2.75 star read. This book really made me realize that I like plot-driven books rather than character-driven books, and this was very character-centered rather than plot-centered. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I didn't really see the point of it. I'm really sorry. I also don't really get Malibu Rising. The only Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I did enjoy was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. The next book that I read was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. This book I rated 2.5 stars. I think the book started out strong and it had so much potential. And for myself personally, it just didn't hit the mark. It didn't take me to where I was hoping we were going. I thought it was going to be really good at the beginning, and it just never got there. I feel like if there was an alternative ending, I could have enjoyed it a lot more, but that wasn't the point, I guess, of the book, so I still rated it 2.5 stars, even though I didn't really like the plot. The next book that I read this year is The Wolves of the Calla by Stephen King. This is the 5th book in the Dark Tower series. I rated it 4 stars. I enjoyed this read a lot. My 3rd favorite book of the month. Actually thinking about it and like having some space and time away from the book makes me realize I did like it more than that. So maybe it's actually 4.5. But at the time I rated it 4 stars. Stephen King just does it for me. I don't know what to say. I love Stephen King, I love his writing, and I'm really enjoying the Dark Tower universe. The final book that I read this month is I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. This book I rated 2.75 stars, and it is a memoir that goes over multiple near-death experiences that the author has had. So there's a lot of trigger warnings that should be read before anyone reads this book. But for me, again, I don't want to keep repeating myself, I'm more plot-driven, and I enjoyed reading those near-death experiences. But I wish they had been told in a chronological order. I'm just the kind of person who really enjoys order, and there's a bit of jumping around on the timeline. And I've never read anything else by this author as well, so I think I was a little bit confused. But if someone is a fan of her other work, maybe it would make more sense and be more enjoyable. But for me, it just wasn't really clear what was happening all of the time, and I got pretty confused. Alright, those are the 12 books that I read in January. My goal for 2022 is 120 books, which is 10 books per month, so I'm happy to be, ahead in terms of what my quota is. February is a shorter month, so it was nice to get a bit, ahead. It's been hectic. I am training for an ultra marathon, so there's been a lot of audiobooks happening. And work has just been destroying me, so I haven't had time or desire to look at a physical book when I get into bed at night. So we're going to continue on reading strong. It's the middle of February, and I'm on track still with my reading goals, so I will see you for February wrap-up and potentially a training update before then. Alright, thank you. Bye.